Jack with Jack Flash Auto Repair. Today we're going to be doing some valve covers on this V6 2008 Chevy Silverado. This is the 4.3 liter V6, and this generation goes from 2007 to 2013, so if your truck falls in between those years, this will apply to you if you have the V6. If you're a guy like me that likes to have a tool list, get an idea of what the job's going to be like, and just see what's going on before you dive in, this video is going to be right there for you. Here are all the tools that you're going to need for this job. A light, highly recommend using a light for this because it's hard to see back there. I've got a tool for taking the belt off, a belt tool, but you could also just use a regular 3/8 ratchet. I've got my electric 3/8 ratchet here. It just makes the job a little easier, but you can do it with a regular one. Got a 10mm, a 13mm, and a 14mm socket. A pair of pliers, does not have to be needle nose, just something to get the hose clamps with. A flathead, a razor, some Scotch-Brite, and some brake clean. So the first step is to remove this intake piping. I shouldn't need to remove the box itself, so I'm just going to start from this pipe and work that way. I just loosen this hose clamp, so this should just kind of come right off. And then I'm going to loosen the hose clamp over here on top of the intake. Well, it just comes right out. There's a hose on the bottom. You gotta unplug, and the whole thing just comes out like that. Okay, so to get to this side, you're going to need to take this big old bracket loose right here, so you can kind of pull it forward and get that all the way out. Get the valve cover all the way out. This hose is gonna be in your way. This wiring harness is going to be in your way. You can remove this bolt right here to get the harness a little bit more wiggle room. You can pull this whichever way you feel needed. Just be careful you're not damaging it. And before you do any of that, you're going to need to take the belt loose. So right there is a 3/8 inch square. You just put your ratchet right in that square and then turn, and it will take the tension off the belt, and you can take the belt off. Just remember how it's oriented. There's a video of the orientation real quick, so you can use this as a reference if you need. Okay, so you take your driver and you put it in the square and you spin it to the left, and that takes the tension off the belt. You can just slip it right off. A few 14s right here, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to take my socket and pull those off. An extension could probably be used for right here, so you're not hitting your AC pump, but not necessary. Okay, it looks like there's still a bolt in somewhere. It's hiding down here in the corner. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the bolts all the way out, just hopefully to get as much wiggle room as possible. They're the same length on that bottom corner in this one. See if this one's the same, and it is. So all three of those are the same, and then there's a nut right there. Make sure you're keeping track of your parts. Just put them somewhere safe. Got a 13 right here to get that wiring harness out of the way. And that also removes this bracket, so it makes this a little bit easier to move around. Now that we've got this bracket loose and this bracket off and out of the way, wiring harness is a little bit more loose. I'm going to take off these 13s here. There's one. 2, last one is covered up by the wire harness. I'm going to remove my brake booster line just to get a little bit of extra space. You could use some pliers for that hose clamp, or just use your hands if you want. There's a little clip bracket that's holding the wiring harness on. You can take a flathead and pry that up. Okay, there we go. That out of the way. Get this last 13 now. Okay, we'll take this line off. Pull that little line off right there. And then I recommend hitting this area with a vacuum before you actually pull the cover off. Any debris you have won't just fall right into your valve train that way, so I highly recommend doing that. So I'm actually sitting in the engine bay right now. Gives me a lot better access. You can see right back here, right there, there's a 10 millimeter that holds this bracket that sits over the valve cover on. I'm going to take that off so it's easier to put the valve cover back on and stuff like that. Take it off. There's these harnesses, or these little brackets holding the spark plug wires on, so you might have to deal with those to get the wires out of the way. Other than that, not a ton on this side. Just make sure you have this bracket loose to give you some extra room to pull it out. And I think it should just about come out. I'm going to vacuum it and then pull it out. Okay, so I've got everything pulled back now. Now all that is left is to try to wiggle it out of here. And just do what you can. Maybe I think I can unplug this little sensor right here. There you go. Ah! Everything fell. There we go. One valve cover out. So now it's time to clean this up. Clean up the mating surface there. Put it all back together. Got the valve cover clean. Looks a lot better than when it came out. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you definitely want to be free of any debris, especially in that gasket area. All I did to clean it was use hot soap and water, scrub it with a wire brush, and then when I got most of everything out, I brought it out here, held it over my oil pan, and sprayed it down with brake clean to get the rest off. And this is the final result. Maybe took me about 10 minutes. So go ahead and do that if you're doing this job. Do it right. I'm going to be cleaning up over here next. You can see the gasket is still sitting on there. I'm going to pull that gasket off, use a razor to get any of the big chunks of rubber that may be left, and then once all the big chunks are gone, I will rub it with some Scotch-Brite, spray it down with brake clean, and then put the valve cover back on with the new gasket. Okay, you can see I've got that all cleaned up now. That is pretty much what it should look like. Just straight silver, no black streaks, no nothing, just nice metal surface for your new gasket to seal against. So now, take our gasket and stick it in the valve cover. And then you have these 3 grommets where your bolts will go through. You want to replace those as well. Most gasket kits are going to come with that. I use Felpro for most of my gaskets, and they never really do me wrong, so I'm probably going to keep using them. So putting the gasket in really isn't too complicated. One thing that I like to do is take some kind of grease. I always have brake grease lying around, so I usually use that. And I just stick it kind of in the corners right here, maybe a little bit in the middle, just little dabs, just to keep it suctioned into the cover, so that way when I go to put it on, the gasket isn't slipping out, and I'm not pulling it back out, shoving the gasket in, having to be real careful putting it in. This kind of makes it a little bit easier. Before I put that one in, I'm going to put those grommets in, because I'm going to put them in with it face down, and I don't want to push on that new gasket. Let's take 3 of them. And it helps to lube them up a little bit. You can use whatever. I'll use a little bit of brake clean sometimes. So you see I just kind of sprayed it down to get it wet, shoved it right in. It's got a tapered end, so it's really easy to get in. Just make sure you're shoving it nice and center, make sure it's sitting nice and flush like that when you're done. And yeah, that's all the lubrication you need right there is the brake clean, and it'll dry up before I'm even finished, so nothing to worry about. Boom. Just like that, got the new grommets installed, looking good. Let's flip it over, put our gasket in. There's a lip on the gasket, that smaller lip that goes inside of the valve cover. And then the big part sits down against your head. So I'm gonna spray this out one more time, make sure there's nothing in there. And just add some small amounts on the lip that goes into the valve cover. Kind of see what I'm doing here. See, just a little bit. Doesn't take much. The thing about sticky grease is you really don't got to use a lot. You don't want it to cause any problems when you're trying to torque it down as far as sealing, so you don't want to make a super thick layer. Just want enough to help it not fall out. There, just like that. So now, let's take this, make sure this is dry in here. It's not. There we go. Nice and dry. And just stick it in there. Helps if you start the corners first and then just kind of work it around. Make sure there's no dirt in your crack. For real. I know some people, I see them doing this job, they got a lot of dirt in their crack, and then they fail, and they're like, why did it fail? It's like, you got a lot of dirt in your crack, bro. Can't you see that? So you can do a little test, hold it upside down. It's not sagging anywhere. Should be good to install. So now I'm going to take it over to the car and put it back on. Okay guys, I'm going to try to get you a good view here without blocking it, but it is kind of hard to actually get in there and put stuff in without getting right in front of the camera. So gist of it is I'm going to put it in like that with the front facing down and then lower the back on so I can kind of slip under this front bracket here, because that was the hardest part to get around. Then the rest of it, you can just shove the wires out of the way as I'm dropping it down. Okay, so kind of pull that forward a little bit. Do what you can. And just drop it on. And then you can use a mirror to look around, or if you're in the engine bay like I am right now, you can just kind of get a good look at it. You can feel with your hands, just feel the gasket sticking out, not, you know, out of its slot or anything, but make sure it's, you know, in there the way it's supposed to be. Sometimes it can slide up inside the valve cover, so you look from the side and there'll be just a gap where you can't see the gasket anymore. It's because it is curving inside. Or you'll have the opposite where it's sticking out this way. And so you just want to make sure all the way around that everything is where it's supposed to be. Now I'm going to take my 3 bolts and put them back in and torque them down. Alright, so I've got my bolts here, cleaned them all up. I'm going to just stick them in there and tighten them down. Helps to put a little lube on these too. It's kind of a tight fit. There it goes, much better. And the first one's always the trickiest. Just feel it out. Look at where the gasket is sitting, and that should give you a decent clue as to where this should be sitting. You see, even though I'm using the electric ratchet, I'm using it very, very gently, making sure that I'm not cross-threading anything or threading it into something imaginary. If you can start it by hand, that's great, but also the rubber can make it kind of difficult to start by hand because it's grabbing it. Okay, got all three of them started now. I'm gonna whip out the torque wrench and torque them down. All right guys, got my torque wrench out. I've got it set to 84 inch-pounds. It's also 7 foot-pounds. Most valve covers I just do them to 7 foot-pounds unless it specifically says otherwise. But I found that 7 is about the sweet spot. You always want to torque from the middle and then go out. There's only 3 bolts here, so it's just middle, outside, then outside. But if there was more, you want to go just from the middle out in general. Okay, just give it one more little test on each one. Okay. Looks good. Now all we gotta do is do the same thing on the other side. Just for this video, I'm going to pull this hose off, but that's only so you guys can see. I don't actually need this to be gone. It does make a little bit more room to reach in there, but definitely does not need to be removed. But I'm removing it, and I didn't want you guys to think that you had to remove it. I am just doing it so you can see. You remove this 10 mil down here next to the exhaust to get the dipstick a little bit loose. You can bend this tab back. You can bend that tab back there back where all the wires are connected. There's a 10 mil up here by the intake. I'm not sure if you guys can see it or not, but if you remove that, then there's a little bracket down here that will lift up and out of the way, and that should be everything. Your alternator cables might get in your way, so you could unhook those if you want a little bit more room. These have coolant in them, this one and this one, they have coolant in them. So you unhook them, coolant will come out, and then you're gonna have to bleed the coolant system and buy coolant, and it becomes a whole nother thing. So probably don't unhook those. And then, yeah, it'll all come out. So I'll show you guys how I do it, and then hopefully you can do it too. Okay. Well, this bracket is in the way too, so I think I'm gonna take that one off. Looks like it's a 13 maybe. Now we got that loose. Where's it at? That one right there. Take that one out, and this whole bracket for the wiring harness will come loose. Okay, and we got all that out of the way. We could unhook this cable right here on the alternator and the power one going to the alternator, and that would give us a little bit more room to move this cable out of the way. But I think I'm just going to try to bungee cord all this up and see if that will hold everything out of the way for me. So that's about as out of the way as it's going to get. Time to unbolt those 13s and pull this valve cover out and clean it. Okay, now all your bolts are loose, valve cover should be able to just pull right out. There you go. Valve cover number 2 out. Valve cover is back in with the new gasket and new grommets. The only thing left to do from here is hook up everything you unhooked to get there. So if you unhooked more or less than I did in this video, just make sure you are tracking back and putting everything back the way it was. So I'm gonna start with this side and then move back over to that side. I've got my little pile of bolts right here, and I'm just gonna go until I don't have any more extra bolts. That's how I know that everything is back where it should be. I'm gonna hook this hose back up, just get everything back right. Just like that, it's back together. Like I said, just double check all your connections, and then when it's back together, start it up, make sure everything is running right, and that will be it. Hope it helped everybody. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.